All right. Hello and good evening, everyone. We want to welcome you here to this incredible conversation that we're about to have. I want to welcome our beautiful panelists here. And just to give it a preview, we're here facing, of course, a big mental health crisis right now, specifically, with our veterans, but also that addresses their families and community and friends. We're here to explore some of the breakthrough therapies that can significantly reduce some of that stress. And we're going to be introducing some incredible speakers today. Our host, Jon Dalton, who is here, and then Tom Feegel is here, Clayton Smith, and also Gehrig Tucker. Thank you so much for being here with us today. And before we get started, I want to introduce our organization here in Northern Nevada, the Nevada Coalition for Psychedelic Medicines. We are a 501c4 nonprofit, and we're dedicated to championing and the legalization of psychedelic assisted therapy here with a reduction of penalties. And we do so through education, collaboration, and cultural change. We're really fighting to save the lives and revolutionize mental health. We're going to have our links and share our links in the chat. And we want to welcome all the attendees who are here with us. Please feel free to use the chat option and let us know, where are you joining us from? East Coast, West Coast, maybe some Mexico folks as well. So let us know, and there will be an opportunity to ask your questions. Why you're really here. You have this incredible panel and speakers, experts on the call. So use this time. So I want to also introduce our sister organization, Sierra Psychedelic Society, which is a 501c3 nonprofit, which does a lot of grassroots and building community, providing education, and promoting risk management around psychedelic medicines. And with Sierra Psychedelic Society, we believe in healing loudly. Together, we can change lives. Without further ado, I want to introduce Jon Dalton, our president of Nevada Coalition for Psychedelic Medicines. Jon is an incredible human and a 23-year U.S. military veteran, former Navy SEAL, who completed 11 combat deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan. And his years of service exposed him to repeated trauma and multiple traumatic brain injuries, which then manifested in complex mental health challenges. Like many veterans, he found that conventional treatments offered limited relief. And Jon's healing journey took him to a pivotal turn where he connected with a veteran group and introduced him to psychedelic therapies in Mexico. With that experience, that was so life-changing for him. It's not just a symptom, but a deep, profound healing. Today, Jon dedicates his entire life to advocacy, fighting to bring these medicines in a safe, legal, profound way to our people, especially to the veteran communities and first responders. Jon, I'm going to pass the mic to you. Thank you all for being here. And again, for our participants, please use the chat to be with us tonight. Thank you, everyone.
Great. Thank you so much, Marina. And before we get started, I'll just give some quick bios on the other three panelists. So Tom Feegel is an experienced entrepreneur, founder, and executive with a track record of leading successful venture-backed startups. Currently, he serves as the CEO of Beond Ibogaine, the world's premier network of medically based Ibogaine treatment facilities. Beond's mission is to address addiction, depression, anxiety, and PTSD through psychotherapeutic treatment and psychedelic plant medicine innovation. I ran into them through mutual friends, Veteran Mental Health Leadership Coalition, Adam Marr, who connected me with Tom and Clayton. Beond Ibogaine is located down in Mexico, and Feegel pioneered an integrative approach to trauma and addiction recovery. It's very novel and it's very successful. Their facility combines medical and therapeutic care with a resort-like environment, leveraging telemedicine and advanced technology for mental health healing, and I'll let him go into that in a little more detail. Next, we've got Clayton Smith. Clayton is a distinguished former U.S. Army infantry captain and a proud Purple Heart recipient. He's embarked on a remarkable journey of resilience and recovery. And after leaving the military in 2013, he faced his own invisible battles of traumatic brain injury, just like me, and PTSD for over a decade. And I'll let him go into that a little bit as well. And finally, we've got Gehrig Tucker. Gehrig's true Nevadan and a passionate outdoorsman and a medically retired Army veteran. After sustaining a traumatic brain injury in the Special Forces qualification course, everything changed for him. And although I won't get into the specifics, it put him into a downward spiral that was not an easy one to recover from. So on that note, I will go ahead and start hitting up everybody with some questions. And like Marina said, feel free to hit us up in the Q&A or the chat with some questions, and we'll see what we can do to get those answers as well. So, Tom, you first. So you navigated a profound journey through health and trauma. What was the pivotal moment that led you to ibogaine, not just as healing, but as a calling to help others?
Well, thank you for that question, John, and thank you so much for putting this on and the work that you do in Nevada and surrounding regions to support people and to provide new hope to people who have been struggling too long. Deeply appreciate your work and know many people who have been helped from it. So thank you for that. And thank you very much for having me and inviting Beond to participate in this this event. Honored to be here with you all.
Absolutely. It's an honor to have you here, Tom.
Thank you. So, I think that it's a long and winding road, but the pivotal moment would be meeting my wife, who grew up with severe intergenerational trauma and maladaptive response to that, who sought mental health treatment from many different conventional facilities and modalities, and was left very unsatisfied. And at the end of a rope, someone said, "You should go to Mexico and try this exotic plant medicine called ibogaine." And she's the kind of person, a real hero to me, the kind of person who is relentless in her pursuit of wellness and better, including psychological, emotional health as well. She's very fit and very physically fit and healthy as well. But really, was unsatisfied with all of the options, including many different experiences with inpatient programs and therapy and various pharmaceutical so-called solutions. She ended up being encouraged to go to Mexico to try ibogaine. And this was 16 years ago. And so if you think this is innovative or cutting edge now, the amount of support and the size of the community was minuscule compared to what we're seeing today.
Wow.
But she went to Mexico, and after years of trying to find satisfactory relief, and in one treatment, not only felt like she no longer wanted to put poison in her body or seek the most familiar forms of maladaptive relief, but she felt like she had a very clear understanding of the reason, the meaning behind her existence. And I met her a few years after that, and I simply couldn't imagine her any other way. And I would hear her describe this experience to people, because she was committed to championing the use of this technology in a safe and ethical and medically based manner. But they would write to her, she would share with them, and they would say, I know someone who needs that. And the routine response was, there's no place that I would recommend. And I heard that for over 10 years and never once had the thought, I wonder if I could build the place she should have gone. But one day I did. I was sitting up in Northern California where we lived, and thinking, what would it take to have the right talent, the right protocols, the right technology, the right training, the right environment for a place to exist that would be good enough for the love of my life. And I started investigating that idea and found, I actually found 3 licensed credentialed MDs in the world that had ever administered Ibogaine, and was able to meet with 2 of them and recruit them to help me start Beond. We now have 11 full-time licensed credentialed MDs and 23 ICU certified nurses, and over 40 other team members that play pivotal roles in the experiential medicine that we are championing. But this is a labor of love, for sure, of trying to build the place that would be good enough for the person I love the most in life.
Holy wow! I had no idea that was the history, the genesis of Beond. That's amazing, and
Thank you.
wow, that's something else. And I would like to add with that when putting together an ibogaine facility must be considerably different than putting together a psilocybin facility or a place where you could administer ayahuasca, because there's specific cardiovascular risks there. And so you specifically mentioned MDs.
Right. So, pardon me. So, ibogaine is, it is the hydrochloride that's derived from the botanical iboga, and it comes from the root bark of a shrub that grows naturally in Central West Africa, in a country called Gabon in the surrounding region. And when it has been used as a ceremonial rite of passage in the botanical form since the beginning of the Bwiti tribe, but used in the Western world, we use a hydrochloride because we can be very precise in the purity as well as the dosage, which is a critical component to the advanced medical protocols that are necessary to ensuring the highest degree of safety for the administration of ibogaine. Of course, that safety is not only physiological. Of course, physiological safety requires proper training, proper screening, proper preparation and monitoring during a treatment, as well as effective and support and aftercare. But at Beond, we also define safety based on emotional and psychological safety, and for many guests, more guests, spiritual safety as well. We're not asking someone to subscribe to our worldview, and even though there are many environments where people do essentially need to go along with a particular worldview of a shaman or a healer or something like that. Beond is like if you took the right amount of a hospital, the right amount of a mental health treatment facility, the right amount of a personal development retreat, and you nested it in a small resort type of environment. What that means is we have to recruit doctors and then train them from board certified in intensive care, emergency medicine in some cases, and and then train them to effectively understand evaluation, screening, monitoring, administration, and support of psychedelic-assisted care, which is not something they're learning in medical school yet.
Yeah. We have a neurologist that's part of our team, and he talked about how little psychedelics is described even in neurology when learning to be a neurologist of all things, and
Yeah.
that's
Well, more and more,
that changes, but
yeah, more and more neuroscience and neurobiology is incorporating some of the findings of research into psychedelics. But there really isn't a way to stop people who have taken psychedelics from going to medical school, which is really what's changing the talent pool most. So this, it may not have been as common in the past, or at least openly admitted. I'm sure that some of the doctors that practice today experimented with psychedelics in their youth, or maybe the older ones in the 70s. But most of the people going to medical school today have either know somebody or have directly experienced psychedelics or some type of plant medicine or alternative healing modality, breath work, for example. And that obviously informs their decision to pursue a career in science and medicine.
that's outstanding. From a research and clinical perspective, what does the current science say about the efficacy of treating ibogaine and treating PTSD, addiction, depression, anxiety, and also traumatic brain injury?
Well, there's because ibogaine is currently a Schedule 1 substance in the United States, the amount of research conducted in the United States is next to none.
Okay.
But there have been quite a few studies by the PhD clinical psychologist Joseph Farsulia, MD Martin Polanco, and others in the area of TBI, PTSD, and chemical dependency, showing with a single dose or a relatively small number of repeated doses, the significant amelioration or elimination of the symptoms of withdrawal from opioid dependency, alcohol use disorder, and stimulants. This is just a Google search away for anybody. In fact, on Beond.us, we've gone to we hired actually Thomas Kingsley Brown, a professor at UCSD, who led one of the largest studies on opioid use disorder in the efficacy of ibogaine, to curate all of these studies so that one wouldn't have to go to Google and just type in, does ibogaine work for, and hope that the best of the studies came up. But the one study that is recently most commonly cited was conducted by Dr. Nolan Williams at Stanford University. It was published in, if memory serves, January of 2024.
Yeah.
And this study published in Nature Medicine, the prestigious journal. And it examined the effects of ibogaine therapy on 30 male U.S. Special Operations veterans suffering from TBI and PTSD. And these participants had one single dose, oral dose of ibogaine, combined with magnesium to mitigate potential cardiac risks. And they were all administered under medical supervision. And 1 month post-treatment, they have written about and documented an 88% reduction in symptoms of PTSD and an 87% reduction in depression and over 80% in anxiety. Many of the participants reported full remission of these symptoms, as well as improvements in cognitive function such as memory and processing speed.
And I can personally attest to that as a veteran that originally went down to the same place they did, and knowing some of those actual special operations guys that went through there, that was what made me realize how profound this treatment is. And I'll add to that. You mentioned earlier about opioid addiction, and although I haven't had that issue, I've recognized an issue with alcohol. And after that treatment, I went down to a 0 day a week drinker and had no desire to drink alcohol. I might drink alcohol once every few months at this point. And I think it's also good to bring up that we're talking about Beond Ibogaine, and there's a new branch to that. And I won't go into it too far, but it'll be with Clayton and it'll be Beond Service. But Beond Ibogaine had you guys spend a tremendous amount of time working with addiction, not just PTSD and depression, anxiety. Is that correct?
That's correct. We specialize about 50% of the people that come to Beond in here in Cancun, Mexico, come for some form of uh, maladaptive relief to trauma that includes chemical dependency, opioid use disorder, alcohol use disorder, or stimulant use.
Yeah.
That's
And
correct.
yeah, I was talking to, Brian Hubbard the other day, and we were talking about how, because I initially got into this for the PTSD, helping veterans with PTSD and helping humanity with mental health. And we talked about how you can look at somebody with an opioid addiction and it doesn't matter how they got there. What matters is that
Correct.
for 18 months, it's virtually impossible to break that addiction. And that's shown in study after study, and just the data, not even studies, just the data on remission for people that try to get away from opioids. And ibogaine is one of the only medicine that's capable of breaking the withdrawal cycle. I want
That's
to,
correct.
I'm gonna switch over to Gehrig, but before I do, I wanted to pass you some gratitude from Andrew Roberts, who said, "Love you, Tom. Great to see your face again. Beond changed my life, and I will never be the same again."
Thank you very much. Thank you for that comment, Andrew. Great to hear from you. Yeah, that's why we do it. Is I've said many times, it feels like I work in the labor and delivery ward, except all the babies are grown-ups. Uh, I have 5 children who I love very much, and I've been in the labor and delivery ward 5 times, and it is a miraculous experience. And this so-called work, the ability to um, lead a team of clinical professionals, of therapeutic professionals, and support professionals to help people reclaim their joy is about as close as I can imagine getting to seeing my own kid get born, which is
That's
really
amazing.
rewarding, deeply, deeply satisfying.
But
So thank you, Andrew.
I don't know whether to say thank you, Tom, or tell you that you're a lucky man, but I think it's probably both. I mean, the situation you're in
Oh, I
is
know that.
is phenomenal. Like, wow, it's so
I
impressive.
know that.
My heart goes
Deeply,
out to you, brother.
deeply
Yeah,
grateful for my good fortune.
yeah.
Thank you.
Speaking of baby adults, Gehrig Tucker is up next.
Thanks, John.
Hey, Gehrig, how you doing?
Yeah, wonderful.
Hey, Gehrig, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate seeing you again. Can you share your personal journey with us? What life was like before your treatment at Beond? Feel free to explain what brought you to the place where you realized that you needed something, and then your experience at Beond, and how has it changed your life since then?
So funny enough, Ibogaine actually decided to show me what my life was like before that, which before I get into it, hey Tom, miss you. Clayton, miss you. Uh, it was uh, it- I didn't want to admit it, but it was hell. My Beond experience, it basically was like, all right, you're gonna sit down and you're gonna feel and you're gonna watch what it was like before this, because I think there was an element of denial that was involved prior to that.
Wait 1 second, Gehrig. Tell me what led up to it, or
Okay, so
or do you want to
yeah,
start it the way? Yeah.
I had 2 traumatic brain injuries while I was in the Special Forces qualification course. 2 in about, I think it was 3 days. Pretty severe. I was basically hallucinating. I was pretty messed up. I got removed from the course and then taken off orders and sent home. I wasn't out, so I couldn't use the VA, and I was kind of in a bind where I couldn't really get access to help when I really needed it. And it got to the point where I would go to change the oil in my truck and I would have to Google how to do that and write down the steps. And this is something I've done hundreds of times before the concussions, the TBIs, and anything simple like that. Changing your oil, folding laundry for me, or doing laundry and organizing, anything involving my brain working properly was hell. My sleep was very erratic, nightmares almost every night. It got to the point where I was scared to go to sleep because I was afraid of what I was going to see when I closed my eyes. In emotional outbursts, I feel like someone was controlling me. I feel like I was like a voodoo doll and someone was controlling me. And I had basically completely lost who I was. I didn't feel like I was in control of myself. I could be around a group of friends that I love, my family, and I felt like I was completely alone. Um, it was hell. It was absolute hell.
Mm.
And I had started up this nonprofit, and there was so much computer work and phone calls and emails, and that was horrible for me. Something as simple as sending an email and trying to find out who I'm trying to talk to and organizing my thoughts. I felt like I was inside of a tornado. And then I had a conversation with you, Jon, and I said, I need help. Time now. And you made everything happen and got me in contact with these 2 lovely other panelists. I went down there and I didn't really know what to expect. And I was just greeted by like the most kind, caring, compassionate, educated people I've ever met in my life. And there was like 30 of them walking around. And then Tom was walking around like an angel, just offering the most sound, sage advice to all the people there. Clay was doing his Clay stuff and making everything happen. And it was, when I went back this time as a facilitator a couple weeks ago, it was cool watching it because what you see is that the environment shapes people. There's so much love and so much gentleness that it shows people that like it shows them that they are A, worthy of that, and B, what it looks like. Like as people, we learn lessons through other people. And so you're like, I'm in this environment. This environment is gentle. This environment is loving. And then, okay, maybe I can show that to myself. And the doctors were absolutely stellar. But contrary to Western doctors, they cared about you. And it wasn't, hey, I'm going to do this medical procedure. It's, hey, how are you? How's your day going? Is there anything that you want to talk about? I had one of the doctors text me 2 weeks after I left Beond and say, hey, I love you, just checking on you. It was like, what is this doctor doing? So the environment, it's hard to find words for how, I think serene is maybe an appropriate word. Serene and loving. And yeah, my Beond trip, it showed me what my life was like, and it felt like it was very, very challenging. It was very, very challenging. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. What else you got for me?
So it wasn't exactly something that you weren't exactly having a good time with it, but you were growing from it, right?
I was having the time I needed.
There you go. Exactly. And so it was difficult. And So you did a flood dose,
Did.
and
Yep.
then go ahead.
I did a flood dose, a booster dose, and then 5-MeO DMT. The flood dose was incredibly challenging, and there were two aspects for me, and then it was interactive. So these entities, beings, whatever you want to call them, showed up, and they answered every existential question that I'd ever been plagued with in my life. It felt just like this. It was as real as this. And it gave me everything I had ever wanted to know about myself. Down to a molecular level, one of the questions I asked was there anything that happened to my brain that affected it that I don't know about? And they shook their head and they said, yeah. And I was like, all right, can you show me? And they took me through this medical thing that happened to me when I was 3. Definitely pretty traumatic on 3-year-old Gehrig. And then once they showed that to me, they took me literally inside of my brain down to the cellular level, it seemed like, and they showed me what I didn't know at the time. I was talking with a friend who's a neurophysiologist afterwards, and I told her about this experience traveling inside my brain. And she said, I want you to look up like the neural connections, the synapses in your brain. And in this, when I was under Ibogaine, it showed me the connections, and then one of them had died and wilted away like a flower. And then they took a new one and they replaced it, and then they pushed, and I was like, oh, that's weird. And then all these bubbly looking things started going back and forth between them. And with the part of the Beond program is you take what's called the Braverman test, and it's an assessment of the 4 neurochemical transmitters: GABA, acetylcholine, dopamine, and serotonin. And my assessment showed me that I was a dopamine inclined human being, and also that prior to Ibogaine, my brain was basically producing no dopamine. So I would do all of these things, all these hard things, and there was just nothing to it. I ran a 56-mile ultra marathon after I got back, and I crossed the finish line, and there was nothing. There was no joy. There was no I did it. It was nothing. And my assessment afterwards was I was at the top, and with dopamine, and my serotonin was through the roof. So I literally went inside my brain and saw Ibogaine fixing the physical trauma to my brain. And then I kind of chalked up to like, yeah, I was under a pretty psychedelic. And then I saw the Braverman results, and I knew what I was feeling. And so I had 3 different metrics of like, this right. works.
It validated exactly. That existential transcendent experience into something that, as a Western human, we can look at some numbers and a test score and be like, oh yeah, actually it makes sense.
Yeah. 2 + 2 does equal 4.
Yeah. That's phenomenal. When you mentioned about the environment and, the love that you're surrounded by there, and the fact that it's okay to love yourself, and how did you feel about yourself before going in there? And then how did you feel about yourself after?
I hated myself going down there. I was in some ways my own worst enemy. And this goes back to some other things that have happened in my life, and the narrative, the inner narrative that had shifted in my mind, and my brain would essentially look for evidence to validate the narrative, which was that I like, hey, you actually don't deserve love. You aren't worthy of compassion. You aren't, like, you shouldn't, when people do nice things for you, that you're either not worthy of it, or they're trying to get something from you. So I had a very unhealthy relationship with myself. And afterwards, it's the complete opposite of that. And it's the fact now that I can just say, like, I love myself, and it's not arrogant, it's not selfish. It's just the same way I love my friends, my family, well, I love myself too. And I actually know what that feels like now, which is pretty great. And it's along with it, what the TBIs kind of took from me was, as someone who likes to be productive and always thinking, and I can't shut my brain off. With that, I still struggle with shutting my brain off sometimes, but I can focus it, and it's not 10,000 voices at once and everything pulling me away. I can kind of harness where I need to put that energy. And now I have the ability to do that. And so that also restored my relationship with myself, because I feel like the productive person that I was before. I feel like I can accomplish things. I feel like I have my energy back. So I feel like old Gehrig, which one of my intentions going down there was reestablish my relationship with that kid inside of me. And that's who I was as a kid. That's who I was until these concussions. Was like, give me 10,000 tasks and I'll get it done in the next hour. So that was also a realignment with myself. And yeah, so that's the word that I walked away from Beond with, was realignment.
That's amazing. And yeah, and that attitude that you had before those TBIs was the reason you made it so far through Q course. And I'm thankful that that's the person I see in you right now. So it's awesome, Gehrig. I'm honored to know you.
Thank you, brother. You too.
When you made the decision to pursue ibogaine treatment, how did your loved ones respond? Were there hesitations, concerns? How did you navigate that? And then have their perspectives shifted at all from before or after, depending on how they felt?
Yeah, I think the word was maybe confusion. They're like, "You're going down to Mexico to do what? For your brain?" That's interesting. So I think it was more of a Yeah, I think it was more confusion. There was no one was trying to talk me out of it. Again, went back to the data and said, okay, this, and this. And then I would say that was 100% supportive. But there was some, I guess, confusion. I'm sure my mom was worried. I'm sure my girlfriend was worried. So there was definitely that, but I still ultimately had complete support. I never doubted that for a second. And then when I came home, the perspective shift was, I mean, I feel like everyone can see it, and I don't really have to tell anyone that it worked, because they can just see that. And yeah, it was. I have multiple loved ones going down to Beond now. Actually, in 10 days, I have a loved one going down there.
Wow.
So yeah, that definitely some perspective shifts, and especially being more involved with this stuff now, it's and seeing how passionate I am about it and having support while we're doing things like this. It's the perspective shift went from maybe confused or naive to, holy crap, this works.
Wow. Yeah. And I mean, at Nevada Coalition for Psychedelic Medicines, that's one of the things that I think we try to advocate is, we believe that these medicines should be legalized with regulated access, particularly ibogaine because of its some of its medical risks. That the power of this and the normalization of psychedelic assisted therapy to society is going to shift, not because laws shift, but because loved ones see other loved ones heal. And there is you can't unsee that. And so that's amazing what you just described, and amazing that they're like, okay, I need this too. This is something that I should be able to. I shouldn't be living my life in pain, however that pain manifests itself. And so that's amazing. So thank you for that, Gehrig.
Absolutely.
Okay, Clayton, over to you. So first off, if you want to give a quick down and dirty on Beond Service versus Beond Ibogaine, go right ahead.
Yeah, well, thank you, Jon. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Gehrig, for sitting on this with me. It's certainly humbling, and it's a privilege to be here speaking on behalf of the whole Beond Service team. And I am one of many that is making this happen. I just have the privilege of speaking with all of you today. So Beond Service and Beond Ibogaine are very, very similar. I'm very biased here, but I feel like Beond is the premier treatment program in the world for Ibogaine. All we did was customize it just a smidge for veterans, first responders, and their family members. So the Beond Service program we've tailored the therapeutic approaches. There's no change to the clinical protocols, but we've changed the therapeutic approach, and we've tailored the coaching a little bit as well. So we run an 8-day program. We do 4 weeks of preparation ahead of time. And that's done with a veteran facilitator or a spouse or a first responder who sat with the medicine. So we put people together in a cohort of 5. So we bring 5 veterans, first responders, or spouses down together. They're led by a peer facilitator. Gehrig was doing some of that work just a couple weeks ago with one of our cohorts. So it's a kind of a big brother, big sister who's been there before, sat with the medicine before, can kind of normalize it and speak the same language. So we do 4 weeks of a fairly intensive prep. People will, there's homework assignments, and there's work to be done to really dig into why we're going down there. We do 8 days on site. Again, it's curated. It's incredibly joyful and fun, but everything is intentional. Every hour, every minute is built with intentionality to maximize the outcome. And then we do 4 weeks of integration. So we don't just throw people to the wolves when they get home. We do structured integration. And I'll tell you, I'm a part of almost every group chat on WhatsApp with our cohorts that have gone through, and the integration goes much longer than 4 weeks. It's just a formal 4-week program. So there's community and brotherhood, sisterhood. And I think, if you were going to ask me to put it in a nutshell, the Beond Service Program it allows veterans, first responders, and speaking for myself as someone who's no longer serving in the military, 2 of the things I was missing most was teamwork and structure. And that is built into this program. So you have a teamwork of people to go do hard things with. Those are the people that 12 years later, you still have that bond from when you were downrange. You now have 4 other people that you've gone and done something hard with, and some structure around the program. So you're not just thrown into it willy-nilly. There's someone, you've got that team leader, that squad leader who, again, has been there before, who can put their arm around you when you need a hug. And they can also put a boot in your ass when you need a boot in your ass. Like they do both. They serve both roles
in the way only another veteran can, right?
And veterans, some of us need it, man. Some of us are hard-headed like me. And sometimes we need that boot, and so, people respond different ways. So, in a very brief, hopefully I didn't go too far, but that's the Beond Service Program. It's built in the image of Beond, but really tailored to a few of the unique needs that help a program be a little more successful for veterans, first responders.
That's amazing, Clayton, and I appreciate how you discuss the post-support treatment, and that, it's 4 weeks formal, but it's so much more longer than that. That's amazing. And it's also so important because integration can last a month, but integration can last months, plural, and so that's fantastic. So back to our baby man, Gehrig. But for Clayton, this is directed to Clayton. So, Gehrig hit me up, and he and I had some conversations because he was really struggling, and he'd worked with some other psychedelics before, and to use his words, they were a tourniquet, and thank God for that, because they kept him where he was, but it was clear he needed something. He needed ibogaine. And so just walk us through when Gehrig got handed off to you, what you saw in Gehrig in terms of his condition, and how he went through the pipeline, for lack of a, more sensitive way to say it, back to the military thing, but how through the process, through the Beond process. Could you do that?
Yeah, for sure. So, what did I see in Gehrig? Someone that looked a whole hell of a lot like myself 8 months prior. And, I think, John, like to kind of to take that and my first day at AA, when I decided that it was time to quit drinking, and I went to my first AA meeting, I thought that I was the most unique person in the world, in the sense that my problems were so unique and so complex and so deep that no one could understand. And then I'm sitting in a room, with 40 other people, and one of them's an ex-felon, and the other guy, runs a piece of heavy equipment at a scrapyard, and they're saying the same damn thing as me. I think that that's, to use that as an analogy, Gehrig came down and we had different, and this is for many of the folks that come down, male or female, we may have had different characters play parts in our stories, but much of the inputs are the same. And I think that we see with our veterans, first responders that are coming through, there's childhood trauma, that there's a lot of common threads that play a role in childhood trauma. And I think a lot of us did really well in the military. There's a lot of us that carried chips on our shoulders because of childhood trauma, and the military side of it just, in my opinion, it hard coded those things. Many people that come down, and I'm using Gehrig and I as an example for probably 80% of the others that have come down in this program that I've had the privilege to meet, is we're all many of us are carrying common threads from our childhoods that we just use those to fuel ourselves as adults in a sometimes destructive way. Sometimes, it allowed us to be those really, high functioning type A people. But that was just a coping mechanism, no different than the alcohol was, for me. So, when Gehrig came down, it was, there's a flow that we see. And when folks come down, there's an element of fear. You're stepping into a really big experience. And I carried that fear for sure. And that's where one of the things we ask our participants is to, not be, we're not asking anyone to be fearless, right? So there's two types of people that jump out of an airplane: those who are afraid and those who are lying. Well, there's two types of people that lay in a bed to do Ibogaine or walk into that treatment room. It's a big, heavy, serious thing, and maybe that healthy fear is a good thing, because you have reverence for the medicine, you have reverence for the process. But we're not asking you to be fearless; we're asking you to be courageous. So Gehrig and the 4 others that went through with him, there's a fear. There's a good, healthy fear when you go through. And then, that next 24 to 72 hours, you see some people go, call it a 50-50 mix. Some people, it's the best. It's like they felt joy for the first time in their life, and they're seeing the world through the lens like they're a 3-year-old again, and they're climbing the walls in excitement and joy. And then some people had really hard experiences that's just going to take some time to normalize and sink in. And our job as facilitators is to hold space for either. So, if Gehrig if he's, seeing a bird for the first time and he just wants to come over and grab me by the hand and be like, let's go watch the birds. There's nothing I want to do more than watch the birds with excited Gehrig. If Gehrig just wants to sit in a chair and not talk for 2 hours and wants me to bring him, a cup of water after an hour and a half of sitting next to him and not speaking, that's my job there. So it can go both ways.
Yeah.
And then by the time we get towards the end of the week, everyone has kind of we have a convergence point. By Thursday morning, we normally go to the beach. We do a sunrise meditation on the ocean. And that's kind of our convergence point. And everyone really, from that point, they're on a upward trajectory. But it's beautiful either way. And the people come out of it was like, oh, that's the experience I needed. I needed to struggle, or I needed to see color for the first time in my life. It can go either way.
That's amazing. Yeah. Going back to what you were talking about trauma and childhood trauma, I was amazed when I first started getting into this work, how the overwhelming majority of the time, there may have been combat trauma, but the initial trauma was oftentimes from childhood. And I like to say that, that's like a double-edged sword. That trauma may have actually helped us to do the things that we did, whether it was being, a SEAL or special forces or a ranger or what. And yet it's like the poison pill in that it's not, it's the dark side of the force. It's not the part that it's not healthy. And it's like when Tony Stark had that little reactor in his chest that was making him a Superman, but slowly killing him inside, So I can relate to that and understand that. I think we have a question from Ben Strawn. Clayton, can you speak to the ways we can help guide people to Beond? And then it's somewhat, he knows it's somewhat easy to get vets down there, but are you seeing issues around the first responder folks, coming down there also?
So we've definitely, and thanks for that, Ben. Look forward to seeing you in about 10 days. I'll be down there to be down there for some of the next group. Yes, we have fewer we have fewer first responder groups than veteran groups that have gone through so far. We've had fewer first responder applicants than veteran applicants. I think that there's, and this is just, I'm going to make an assumption here and off of a sample size of about 200 people that have applied to our program. Veterans are almost all of our veterans or almost all of our service members that are in are out of the military. So there's less of a connection of working with the federal government and a class one. Mm-hmm. So that is absolutely a part of it. I think some of our first responders who are, mid-career are saying, ooh, I could use this, but it's too risky for my career. So I think that's a big part of that. And then secondly is much of the research and even anecdotal experiences has come from the special forces community, which is, veteran heavy. And there's less parallels between, the Green Beret, Navy SEAL communities as, a first responder, paramedic, firefighter. So I'm hoping that, the Beond Service Program is open to any and all veterans, regardless of operational status. And I'm hoping that helps build some commonality. I mean, one of our facilitators is a paramedic and a Marine veteran. So I'm hoping that we can start breaking that stigma a little bit to make it more acceptable for first responders to raise their hand.
Wow. Yeah. And again, this is why I believe that regulated, legalized access is so important, because it's when you're a veteran and you're out, you can, and particularly for special operations, we recognize that unconventional, solutions can solve unconventional problems. And yet, if you're an active first responder, you're still subject to that stigma and the false narratives that are there. And I mean, particularly law enforcement, you are not allowed to do things like this. And that's a problem. And that's, I hold law enforcement, I hold the thin blue line near and dear to my heart, and all first responders, and, whether we're running to the sound of guns or we're running into a burning building, it's, there's real trauma there. And it's very unfortunate that we're still at that point. However, it's changing. And I feel like this is a freight train that's rolling. And I think it'll be, we'll find more and more that people are gonna, when we start to get, just like when Tom was talking about how doctors who had used this to heal themselves and were brave enough to then, or to practice with ibogaine, perhaps in the underground or out of the country, and now they advocate for it. I think as we see our first responders and the leaders within the first responder community who have been treated move up through the ranks, or they have peers that have retired, gotten psychedelic assisted therapy, gotten ibogaine therapy, and then they recognize that's why those people are still here. I think this is how we change that narrative. And it's a cultural change effort. Much like a lot of people hear me refer to a counterinsurgency, which is not done in weeks and months. A counterinsurgency is done in years, and a cultural change initiative in the States, it's going to happen in years. But the way we can do it is by everyone on this call, on this webinar, being loud advocates, or healing loudly, as Assemblyman Max Carter in Nevada likes to say. And he does, he yells that right on the legislative floor as an advocate. So you going to say something?
John, can I take a stab at Ben's second question?
Yes, go ahead.
So Ben asked a question about a lot of folks talk about this being one and done treatment, and can you speak to the duration of the medicine in the system? And so I get asked this question a lot on the the intakes in our discovery calls is how long does it last? Well, the answer I go every time is you're under acute clinical observation for approximately 12 hours, and it can last for 12 years. And that's up to you. This medicine is incredibly powerful in the sense that it is not a magic pill, it's a tool. And anytime I get a chance to talk about it, that is the drum I want to beat, is that it's a tool. It allows you to make the changes in your own life to be the person you want to be, that you're supposed to be. And it's hard work. Like, no one said it was going to be easy. It's hard work.
Yeah.
But it's worth it. And you do have a 90-day, if you eat healthy, if you get some sleep, if you exercise, and especially if you don't drink, you do have about a 90-day window of noribogaine, which is the metabolite that increases neuroplasticity and cognitive function. You've got about a 90-day window normally after the flood, or after you sit with medicine. And yes, you can learn, whether you want to learn German and the guitar, or you want to learn new trauma responses and a meditative practice. You have this ability to learn. But we've got people in the program that are facilitating that sat with this medicine 3 years ago. And some people are called to sit with it again. Some people are saying that was enough for me and I'm good. What we've tried to do with Beond Service, and to plug Beond Service, is we've tried to make this as sticky as possible, so you can be one and done, so that there's no requirement to, I have to go back from my yearly ibogaine treatment, so I'm not sad and want to kill myself anymore. Like, no, we actually, it's really important to us that you can be one and done. And we do that through a process where we really dig into things like our core elements of ourselves, our key dimensions of ourselves. We dig into our needs. An unknown need is an unmet need. And we're going to meet our needs. A good friend of mine taught me, we're going to meet our needs one way or another, and we can do it constructively or destructively. So we spend, and Gehrig knows through his integration, we spend a lot of time talking about needs, so that when you inevitably hit that backslide, when life gets hard, like I've had plenty of spiritual relapses in the last 12 months, but I know my needs and I can dig into them, and I don't have to go sit with a magic pill to be happy. I have the ability to solve my own problems. And that's what we try to coach in this program. So
and absolutely. What I just heard from that is that, okay, this isn't the magic pill, this isn't the psychiatrist throwing you some SSRIs, and that it might be a single treatment of ibogaine with perhaps a follow flood dose, after that, and the 5-MeO, but it's actually a process that occurs over months, before, during, and after. And so that's how it's so successful. We're about out of time. I want to ask one last question. Are spouses of veterans able to experience Beond even if their veteran spouse has not yet experienced Beond?
Absolutely. Yes, please. Our spouses program is completely separate. There is the only prerequisite to being a part of the spouses or partner program is a desire to heal, is a desire to feel better. Your partner could be deceased. Your partner could be separated from yourself. We want to have access, and this is an incredibly underserved community, by the way. The spouses and partners, military veterans specifically, first responders secondly, but our partners and family members have such little access to on par, equitable care through programs like this. And, my North Star is that someday 33% of our cohorts will be spouses and partners, because it's incredibly underserved. So yes, if anyone is interested in that side of it, there's definitely no prerequisite of a loved one sitting first.
That's awesome. And I'll just go ahead and just double tap on what Clay said, which is the spouses and partners of veterans and first responders, they lead a very quiet and a very important and a very trauma-filled in its own way life. They are oftentimes the witness to someone who has, massive trauma, and that in itself creates its own challenges, and that's one of the reasons why divorce rate is so high in those communities. So On that note, I want to wrap this up, and I want to thank Tom so much. Tom, thanks for everything you're doing
Thank
down
you.
there. It's just amazing. I cannot wait to get down there and check out the facility.
I was thinking the same thing, John.
Yeah,
I
as
can't
soon
wait for you to come down and spend time with us.
yeah,
And, just to add to what Clay was saying, ibogaine is not a cure, it's a catalyst. And what Gehrig so eloquently described and what Clay so eloquently described is the activation. We don't even call it integration. We call it activation because the need to consolidate these insights, the need to actively prevent relapse, whether it's chemical or spiritual, as Clay mentioned, the need to seek emotional support and rebuild parts of our identity and a sense of purpose and community, including seeking accountability. This is what ibogaine is activating, and what we have to meet the power of the medicine with our own commitment and engagement. And if we do that, the effects last for a very, very long time.
that's amazing. Thank you so much, Tom. Thank you, Gehrig, and thank you so much, Clayton. And thank you to everyone that attended the webinar today and everyone that asked the questions. Really appreciate it. And I just want to finish off by just reiterating that Nevada Coalition for Psychedelic Medicines is trying to change the laws in Nevada, as well as we work with national organizations to change federal law as well. Join our newsletter. Go to our website, which is just popped up in the chat, nevadacpm.org. Please sign up for our newsletter. Support our legislative efforts. There's a link to donate on the website. We exist and we are doing the work we're doing through donations only. It's hard. It's complicated. It takes a lot of work, and we need your help. We ask you to be a part of this coalition. Thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate it. I'm grateful. God bless you all, and thank you for taking the time to come here today. Bye now.
See you guys.